Hey guys, Andy again, spoken label back in the house. We've had fun lining up here this morning, so it's just been absolutely pouring down the rain for a couple of hours. Yeah, you can tell summer's gone, so we're up into Norwich today, I believe. Is that correct, Julia? Or am I
Yes,
got?
that's right. And
Yeah, I
it's
thought you
sunny
were.
in Norwich.
Oh, stop rubbing it in, right? So yeah, we've got a good friend of spoken labels here. The fantastic Julia Webb. Now, I've actually lost count when we last had you on spoken label, Julia. It was a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
I think it was at least 2 years ago, and I
Yeah,
think I was talking about my last collection, which
yeah.
is called The Telling.
Sounds about right, doesn't it? Yeah, I think it was that. It was a couple of years ago. I know people's wondering. I love Julia. She's a fantastic writer, and publishers today. Publishers, by the way, I want to thank them. I've forgotten who sent this book to me with Nine Arches Press. Now, what's great is when I do podcasts like this today with Julia, I often will request a copy of the manuscript by PDF. And then your publishers contact me, Julia. I know she left you gobsmacked, didn't it, on this one?
It did, yeah.
So both want to thank her for sending me across this fantastic book. And it really is a good book, this. And it's took me a bit to get through this, and in a good way, because it's so well layered. Great time. Now, Julia, obviously, there's going to be people that don't know you, first of all. So obviously, I think really we need to look at, first of all, to give people a quick, have you been on this before? Give us a bit of a background about yourself as a writer before we start.
So as a writer, well, I came to writing I'd always written, but I came to writing quite late, like serious writing. So I wrote a lot in my 20s. I wrote a book of short stories which never got published, and then I didn't write anything for years and years. And then I did did a art course, and then I ended up going to art school to study creative writing, and then I did
Oh,
a poetry MA at UEA. So I came to it seriously in my 40s. So I'm a great advocate for lifelong learning.
same for me because I've wrote all my life, and certainly I did get my first book done in close to 40 myself, and it's not stopped me ever since. Sometimes it's just at getting the right time in your life, isn't it, for you can really get going. Then it's just an
Yeah, and
explosion.
you have more to write about when you're older as well, don't you? More life
Yeah. Oh
experience.
God, yeah. And I'm still writing about all my misdemeanors and my teens and twenties, and I'm in the fifties. Yes, I can agree with that. Now, obviously, before we talk about your new collection today, I want you to tell people very briefly about something which has happened since the last time I spoke to you. In 2024, you were commissioned, weren't you, by the National Centre of the Writing and Living Wage Foundation to write a poem for Living Wage Week, which I want to learn all about this. So obviously it's something that means a lot to me and people I know that are on the breadline basically, which is a fantastic project this. So where did this come about from?
Well, National Centre for Writing, someone from there just got in touch with me. I think maybe somebody dropped out actually, and so it was quite a tight turnaround, and asked me if I wanted to do it. And obviously, coming from a working class background and being a single parent when I was younger and stuff, the brief really meant a lot to me. So I quite enjoyed doing it, and it was quite a tight brief. It's not really quite like the sort of poems I normally write, but I did enjoy doing it, and all the things in it, because it has several sections that are to do with different types of work. They're either things that I did as a job, or the last one in the poem is a thing that my son did as a job. So they're like from direct real life experience.
You know, always makes it more fun sometimes when you're writing with direct life experience, and
Yeah.
particularly if it's projects like that come last minute. I've had them myself before, and it's brilliant. So, no, great stuff. Okay, now the majority of the podcast today, as we pre-advertised, is for you new. I'm going to wave it. And I know you've got a copy of your book there. So you want to give us a wave of it as
I
well, Julia?
have, yeah.
The war wave, right? Great time. Now, I know this has took you a couple of years to get together. So tell us first of all about the background of this book. Then, I think what I've read in your work, this is probably your most personal book to date as well. I think actually.
Yeah, I think it's personal, perhaps in a different way to the others. So
Hmm.
the others were a lot more to do with family life, and Threat was really about growing up in a small town as a, and what my experiences were like as a teenage girl in a small town in the 80s. But this is more, and I'd kind of touched on the subject in the other books as well, like to do with grief and loss, because I've had quite a lot of premature loss in my life. My first partner was killed in a car accident. My mum died when she was 60 and my brother died in his 30s. So they're all things I touched on before, but I think I really wanted to kind of explore grief itself and like our relationship with those who have died. Because if you don't have a very straightforward relationship with people who have died, like your relationship after they died changes over time and how you feel about them, and you discover things about them you didn't know. And it's so I just wanted to sort of explore that really.
No, it's a great exploration, this because people will see from the book, and I don't want to go into too much depth on it, but people will see you've laid it out straight from the beginning of it, which works really well in the memory of all these people you're mentioning in it. So it adds to context, I think, straight away to it. Now, the book itself, you've set this out in quite an interesting way, actually, because obviously the book itself seems to start on page 19 with the title piece, Grey Time, but three other poems before that, because the book itself is split into sections with these three poems been before that. Now, I want to talk about a geography of the dead, but before we do that, what was the decision to actually put these three poems before he started with Grey Time?
I think they felt pivotal to the collection in some way, especially Geography of the Dead, because one of the things that I did, the way I wrote this book was slightly different to my previous ones, where I read a lot around the subject of grief and loss. And I also read a lot of poetry collections and novels around the subject. But I also went on this kind of pilgrimage to go to where my mum was buried. And I haven't been there since she died, which was 2010, because it's
Oh,
right in the middle of nowhere in rural Wiltshire.
yeah.
And while I was there, um, like my brother is buried in the town where I grew up, Thetford, which is in Norfolk. And I was thinking afterwards how far apart they were, and like so that was where the original idea for Geography of the Dead came from. But I think I wanted to sort of like the first poem sort of frames the collection in a way, I think.
Yeah, I think it does these three pieces. It's could you agree? Could it be like they would like a three-part prologue to what comes to the poems? You said definitely it's a big framework set in these three pieces. In particular, obviously, a geography of the dead, because I love geography of the dead, and I love the texture and the way it was set out with this poem. So tell us about how this poem came together.
Oh, thank you. Well, um, it was interesting actually because I'd written little snippets of it, and then one of the things I did when I was writing the book was I did an Arvon at home course,
Hmm.
um, which was to do with research and writing. And one of the things that Tara Bergin asked us to do one afternoon was to look at what three words uh, references and grid references to do with things we were
Ah,
writing about.
right. That explains why then. So people are wondering with this piece, there is lots of grid references and like geography references. That explains why. Oh, excellent.
Yeah. And so that sort of fed into it. And then for some reason, I was randomly reading Song of Songs on the internet, and then that bits of that just seemed to fit with it. And originally it was all like quite linear, like in a straight, like laid out normally. And then like I just felt it needed to move around more. Almost, I suppose, almost like, graves in a graveyard or cars as well, because there's a lot of distance in it as well. It just felt like it needed to echo the geography that's in the poem,
Yeah, I think
which
it
is why it moves
definitely.
around the page like that.
I think it's because people obviously spread it among four pages. This poem alone. Let's double check it is four. So yeah, I've forgotten. Yeah, it is four. And it's such a fragmented way of it. It covers a lot of ground over distance, I think, by doing it the way he did it. So it's spread it out. No, it's a beautiful poem indeed.
Thank
Now,
you.
after that, obviously, as I said before, we then went on to the first section of the book, Grey Time. Now, what made you, because I'm curious on this then, first of all, and I presume this is intentional, but you, Julie, it will be intentional, is to have all of this section actually in the contents page in italics, each little piece.
Yes, because I think to show that they're part of a bigger poem rather than being
Mm.
individual, they are like individual poems, but they're part of that big sequence, which is the title sequence, Grey Time. And that sequence started, I went to a little mini, I think it was a Verve workshop with Carrietta, but also I'd been reading it as well. She bought a bit. There's a book by Guillemot Press which called White is a Colour by Rosemary Waldrop. And after so it was a prose poetry workshop, and after the workshop, I went back and reread White as a Colour, and it just sparked an idea, like completely different. But it somehow enabled me to write about that really difficult, the two times when my mum was in hospital. And originally, it was like a sequence of prose poems, but like bunched together much more than
Mm.
they are now. So
Yeah.
yeah, for context, all each segment of the book is on a different page. So they look like that. So each section is on a different page. And I'd
Yeah.
had them much more bunched together. And when I did that Arvon at Home course, I took that poem to a tutorial with Tara Bergen, and she said, I really like this sequence, but it needs to have more space. You need to put each poem on a separate page. And
Yeah.
it felt quite
Agreed.
radical to do that. I was a bit scared of doing it because obviously that then takes up a lot more space in the book. And I had to then get rid of quite a lot of other things to do that.
Yeah.
But I think it
This
was
could be great
definitely
time. This
quite.
could be great time too, then maybe in a couple of years' time. Then.
I think
But,
it was definitely the right choice, and I think
yeah.
it works much better. Like it just didn't have the same power when it was all bunched together somehow.
Yeah, no, I agree because it's you look at this. Obviously, it's these state first people who are listening to this on audio platforms. What Julia just showed a minute ago was one of the poems on there, and it's these 10 little pieces are all very, very tiny, fragmented pieces, very prosy, and it's devastating to read. And it made my heart sink when I read them in a good way, in a really good way, because I could
Yeah.
feel the power in it. And I think you did the right thing. 'Cause you made the book breathe, and it's as you were correctly advised to make the book breathe, it gives it that space between each piece, and so it works really, really well.
Yeah, it gives you the time to think about each piece, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Like when they're all together, you're like on to the next thing, on to the next thing. Whereas with this, you sort of sit with it a bit more.
yeah. I think this book's a great example of that. Is the way you let you breathe in the pieces because sometimes it's a mistake some writers can make is they don't necessarily give the audience because poetry books are very different to novels.
Yeah.
God knows I know that. Believe me, I can tell you that one. I don't know if you've ever spoke to my wife, Amanda. She's a
No.
novelist as well as a poet, and she's done 9 novels today, so she's got the next 2 on the way for
Wow.
next year. And I don't know if she does it. I really don't know for the bits,
No.
but I don't know if she does it. But you're right, this book here is a masterclass, really, in the spaces in it. And that Grey Times is such a good example of it. Now, obviously, after Grey Time, then obviously the next section is For I Will Consider My Mother. Now, I thought this again was very, very, it followed on, I think, really quite perfectly from the previous section. But people will see this piece, and it's a great use of the title piece anyway, for I will consider my mother of repetition not been overdone, where each line's obviously got who, then and at the end of it to break the form. So, was this a conscious decision to begin with this piece to do it like that?
Yeah, it was. And that poem, For I Will Consider My Mother, is actually after another poem called Jubilate Agno by Christopher Smart. And it's a
Hmm.
poem from the 1700s, quite a famous poem.
Hmm.
And and it's actually written in a very contemporary way where he's basically just waxing lyrical about his cat. Do you want me to read you a couple of lines of it?
Yes, yes, yeah. In the context
So
of it,
it
yeah,
starts, For I
please.
will consider my cat Geoffrey. For this he performs in 10 degrees. For first he looks upon his forepaws to see if they are clean. For secondly, he kicks up behind to clear away there. For thirdly, he works it upon stretch with the forepaws extended. For fourthly, he sharpens his paws by wood. For fifthly, he washes himself. For sixthly, he rolls upon the wash. I
That's
just think
beautiful.
it's like, yeah, it's
Brilliant.
really,
Yeah, it's what you've done. Obviously, if people compare them, is that's quite playful. Is and obviously yours is much more serious with it. Like I'm not going to read it to you. I think you're doing this in the reading bits where people are going to hear this,
Yeah.
but like did you find then, obviously, when you were writing this piece and you knew it was going to go this form, you were looking at thinking, I'm going to write this and I have to write this in a very different way then.
Yeah, I think it allowed me to be maybe a bit more playful, and that repetition is really nice, I think.
Yeah, it works.
I really like that. It's quite a good vehicle for sort of hanging the ideas off of. And I had quite a bit more, and then I cut it right back, and it had quite a lot of editing to make it because it sort of has like half rhymes and slight rhymes as well. So
Yeah,
it was quite fun to write it.
yeah, I think when you're using repetition like that, I've done it myself, and it's sometimes it trips me right up. And I think you've done a really good job. But you've got it about the right length because I think if you'd gone on for and I've seen people do this before now, if you'd gone on for 2 pages of this, by the end of it, you'd lost the audience. But yours is
Yeah.
about, well, I'm not going to count the lines, but there was nowhere near 2 pages worth anyway. So yeah, it gives it's the breadth again. I think you've done it about the right length, and the editing
Mm.
process shows a lot through there straight away with it. So no, excellent stuff. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
Christopher Smart's one is a lot longer. It's
I was
like,
wondering that.
oh,
I was wondering that after what you said, and I thought, that doesn't sound like it's the complete poem. And I thought, I bet
no,
it
no,
goes on
that
for
was
a
just a
while.
little fragment of it.
I'll be checking that afterwards because I've heard
It's
of
on
it.
the internet. You can definitely find it on the Poetry Foundation, I think.
I'll make a note of that. I've heard of the name. I certainly hadn't read it, to be honest with you. Now, obviously, after that, you went another direction then with the next section, which is the same mother. Now, uh, I want to learn about what made you do it this way, because there's a lot of detail in this next section. There is. It's almost like it was like part one and part two of dealing with what's went on with your mother, really, with that. Like I said,
Yeah,
and it's
that section is more rooted in the everyday, I think, than the rest of the book,
mm,
perhaps. Like I think maybe just having solid loss and grief all the way through could be a bit unrelenting. So I sort of went back to kind of um it's like got a little bit about childhood and young adulthood and like my relationship with my mum when she was alive and some things that kind of explain how she was in a way.
yeah, no, I think it makes sense because obviously they always say like in your I know mine's case that whenever my mother goes, she's left an impact on my life. And my mum is a real character. But it's ironic. I'll tell you this. It's slightly off course, but you'll be able to relate to this. Is when me and Amanda got married 4 years ago now. My mum met Amanda's mum for the first time, and she turned around and told the sister afterwards that, oh, Andy's mum talked more than Andy. And my mum hated that comment, which is pretty true. She does, right? But you do, it's like your mother like that. You see, she would have left an impact on your life.
Absolutely. And my mum was a real character too,
Yeah,
definitely.
I thought so. What I know you, Julia, would not have
If you met her,
surprised me.
you
That
wouldn't have forgotten her.
I can believe that. What I know you, Julia, does not surprise me. Now, I found it very interesting, this section, obviously, with the everything poem that came straight after the same mother. And I've already asked you about this one off mic before. This is probably one of the more experimental poems in it because it's very prosy again. But
Yeah, it is a prose poem.
yeah, now where did I'm going to talk about the content. What was the context of the form of this piece?
It just came out as a prose poem actually, and I think I when I write a prose poem, I do sometimes try it as an ordinary poem to see if it
Hmm.
works, and it didn't. It would have been just too long. But I also wanted that momentum, like because it's again got repetition. She gave me. It's like one idea was piled on another sort of, but it's a poem looking at all the different facets and nuances of a close relationship, how the good and bad are like really closely intertwined and
Yeah.
you can't really pick them apart, like, so
Yeah, I get you completely. Yeah, it
yeah,
is. I've got a lot of relationship with your parents and like that. There's,
yeah,
well, yeah, I am. Listen, I'm going to get in trouble if I say much more about my family, but I've got a good relationship and I don't want to lose it. But yeah, I get you completely right. Yeah, back to what you said before, obviously, you tried it out as a poem, a style standard poem originally. Did you know then when you got to it as a standard poem, you knew straight away for, oh, prose straight away then,
I
did you?
think this one came out as prose and then I tried breaking it up a bit and it didn't work. But
Yeah.
there is another poem nearer the book called Hot House, which started out as a standard poem
Ah,
and then got compressed into being a prose poem. And it does, and that was at the suggestion of my editor actually, and it does work better as a prose poem. She was right.
that's not
Yeah.
a good editing that. So if they've got the guts to turn and say to you, no, try this. And they
Yeah.
know, good editors will know, obviously, what will work in your voice now. I get completely with that.
Absolutely.
So,
And when she said it, I was like, I don't think it will. But as soon as I did it, it was like, oh, yeah, she's right.
yeah, she knew, she knew.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say. She knew. So, right, okay, on to the next section. Sorry, people wondering, I've got the book in front of me here. And this is what's great when the publishers send me books sometimes. Please send me more books, publishers, because that one is easy to flick through. Now, we're going to look at the section commune next. Now, obviously, tell us about the section generally, first of all, then, with
So this
communing.
section is when I was 21, my first partner, who was 24, was killed in a car accident. And we were living in a commune at the time that happened. And it was, as you can imagine, very, really devastating. And so that section is really about that and also the aftermath of that, like um, to do with other things that happened and bad decisions that I made in the wake of that, as I was going through the grief and loss, it makes you not the best judgment of things sometimes.
Yeah, and I've done it myself before now that when you're most vulnerable at the end of a relationship sometimes. So whatever reason, I understand
Absolutely,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, it can make sense and explains on the poem I want to ask you about in this section because for some reason I've been picking up the pieces there with the more abstract leanings on. I'm not sure, but that's my train of thought at the moment. But I did really like mourned. Obviously, that give us the context of that piece and straight away. But again, what made you want to do this piece in this form? Because it does tend to wander all a bit over the page, and I like it that.
It does wander, and it's also a bit fragmentary, I think, as well. And that was deliberate, really, because I think things are like that. They're not straightforward when you're grieving.
Yeah, I think so. So I got it straight away. And people are wondering, obviously, at the end of it, where you've got the bit your belongings strew across the floor. Each bit's moving further and further across the page, and I like that because I got that, and I thought, yeah, I can see what you're doing. Like it's each bit of it, each part of them is sprawled across the floor. Yeah, no, very, very well done indeed. That. So, and obviously the section after that, this I should have wrote these down actually, but anyway, is we're going to look at the new section, and obviously and I've really liked the second poem on this one. Oh, so I should have asked actually before we move on with that. Which section was it? Sorry about this, people. Yeah, no, it's all right. It's this section here, new first of all. This is the much shorter section than the other sections in the book.
Yeah.
Was this a conscious decision, or just that's what that story was?
It was a conscious decision. I think maybe it was longer at one point, and then I just kept like obviously like the best poems, and because there's a lot about my mum in there, I wanted to also put in a bit about motherhood. So there's just a little section on that, and maybe I'll write more about that later. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
no, I
yeah,
get.
it felt like, and I was thinking, is it too short? Because we made this decision. One thing you can see when you've got the physical book is that it's got these grey pages that break it up, which is like echoing the grey time.
Yeah, I think
So
it's a good time when it makes you stop sometimes for a bit of reflection before you move on to the
yeah,
next section. I think that gives it that space, and I'm glad that I got hold of this book as a paperback. It proved easier to read it in some ways than PDFs in this case, actually.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, I think that's true. Yeah,
yeah, you have to know that. Now, the poem I was talking about is in this section. I think you're doing this one in the readings as well. It's to him who came from my body. I know who this is about, obviously, but and I've talked about this off mic before as well. But this is where you quite strategically do it's an I poem, but it doesn't cover the
yeah.
full piece, and each I you use is there to move the narrative on quite successfully. Now, tell us about the structure of this piece then next.
This piece started out quite a lot longer, I think. And then I think there is a slightly different version of it out in the world, which was published in Finland Poetry Journal
Hmm.
a few years ago. But yeah, I was just thinking about what you give of yourself when you're a parent, really. So so a lot. So it's not quite as much about the relationship, it's more about what you give. Like I give you this and I gave him this.
Yeah, no, I think he does does it. The last line on that, and I love this last line on it. Which, you don't mind me saying this,
No,
and
no,
I
of course.
must lay down my sword and shield because you're giving everything there, like sort of self sacrifice, and it. I got that straight when it really, really hit me, and that did John straight away with it. So fantastic
Yeah.
stuff
It's
indeed.
like you have to let them inevitably you have to let them go their own way, and that is part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's obviously you don't. I don't know if you know, but I don't actually have any children. But it's the way my life's gone last year or two. Is I've got a surrogate daughter, to be honest, and I'm not going to name her because she knows who she is, right? Who's a grown, young, beautiful woman, and it's I've learned a lot from that relationship, and so as a man with a
Yeah,
wife. So it's you learn a lot about you because what you give them from love. So it's
absolutely. It's
yeah,
unconditional, isn't it?
yeah. That's what it's become like this. When this word wasn't planned as well. So, but yeah, the last section of the book, and is I Find My Dead Lover by the Side of the Motorway. Heck of a title, this one. Straight away with it. So now, obviously, take us in the context of this section then next.
So this last section, it hops about a bit, I think. It starts with that really weird poem, which is almost like a dream. I have occasionally had dreams where I've met my ex-partner. Um, and obviously he was killed on a road, so but it that this section also touches on the death of my brother briefly and the complex emotion around losing someone you're essentially estranged from because my brother had complex mental health issues. And also in this section it touches a bit on my recently diagnosed neurodiversity as well.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, did I know about that? All right. Uh, Tell us about that then, because I didn't know about that. I would have asked you about that more in advance. So do you think this has impacted you when you're writing then, being diagnosed with this?
I think it I mean, I think maybe it's made me a better writer to begin with. Um,
Yeah.
like I know from teaching, sometimes my students say that I'm just able to tap into a sort of surreal a surrealness that some of them can't access for whatever reason. So so there is that. But I have been exploring a bit about not writing about it head on, like, like I've been diagnosed as autistic, but more about difference and what that difference means and misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And
No, I
yeah.
understand. Yeah, I got diagnosed with dyspraxia when I was 28, and
Ah,
that made a big difference in my life. 'Cause I'd struggled throughout the full of my life before that stage, and it was like it's a relief, I think, sometimes because you've always got that
yeah.
inkling, and
Absolutely. And it makes you go back over a lot of the past, doesn't it? And
yeah,
like, oh yeah, now that makes sense. And now that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
it made me realize more conscious of what I wanted to be as a person when I knew what I was at. The same in your case, which I didn't know about actually. Respect you them for actually talking about that because it's the hardest thing to admit to people. You've got that diagnosis. We're going
It
through
is
that. We're
hard.
going
It
through that
is,
with
yeah, it
Amanda at the
is
moment.
hard.
So yeah,
It has a mixed reception from people. So I was diagnosed with both autism and ADHD. So,
yeah,
and one of the things they say is I mean, when I was younger anyway, the known model of neurodiversity was quite extreme. So it was less picked up, especially in girls. But
yeah.
also if you have both things, one thing can mask the other. So it's less likely to get picked up.
Yeah, I'll talk about most in the break two times because there's a few things I won't mind asking about here, but which is not for podcasting, so straight away with it. But no, I did not. That's interesting. That now, I love the way you concluded this book and was with the your words before was a very abstract without poem. Now, I think
Yeah.
this is most definitely the most abstract piece in the book, and I'm always a believer in making your audience work for a poem or two in your book. Now, obviously, what made you want to conclude the book with such a quite an abstract poem?
I think I think it is abstract, but I mean, for me, it feels like a sort of a resurrection poem, and I wanted to come back to like to bring it back to the beginning in a way. But also, it's got some quite nice imagery towards the end, and I wanted to leave on a positive. I always feel like it's important to leave the reader on a positive note somehow, and not like leave on a rant or something really miserable.
Yeah.
But sort of, I mean, it might be that might be silly, it might just be my thing, but I quite like to leave with like a lovely image or a more slightly more uplifting thing.
No, I think you're right. I completely agree with you on that, John. I think you've got to leave it some kind of conclusion with the book. Whether you take it back to the beginning, there's
Yeah.
got to be, you can't just throw people out in the air with nothing at all, to answer yourself. No, I agree with you completely. No, it's a good way to finish the book, actually, because it was one of those ones where some poems, time you read a book, you get to the end, you're thinking, hmm. Yours was, I had to go back and read it a couple of times then and reflect each time to get before I actually, the medium was teased out. And I like that. I think
That's
I might,
flattering.
might
I
be
like
my,
that. I like that in a book too.
yeah, you're making people think,
Yeah.
definitely. So now, obviously, that's all in the book now. Before we move on to what you're doing next, and knowing you, Julie, you have something on the go. Now, obviously, since we first chatted a couple of years ago, I know you do cafe writers now, don't you? So you
Yeah.
better tell people what cafe writers is and how this night has
So
developed.
Cafe Writers has been going for about 20 years, I think, and I've been involved with it for about 10 years. But basically it's a live literature event. So, and it used to be completely in real life, but now it's mostly on Zoom. It went on Zoom during lockdown and just got this completely new audience from all over the world. So we do some events online and some in real life. And we also run a poetry competition, an international poetry competition once a year, and that money goes to fund paying writers decently when they read.
Oh, brilliant. No, great idea indeed. So, have you found it then? Because like well, I think you know already, I run my own night anyway. I'll call one in
Yeah,
Manchester in person. And over lockdown, we did our night for close to 2 years actually on Zoom. And it's a different sort of feel altogether for me doing them separately like that. How do you find then when you're doing these nights on Zoom and in person? It's different vibe, isn't it,
it
altogether?
is a very different vibe. In some ways, I really like it because it you get a more intimate experience with the reader, which yeah, it's different. I like both. I'm not sure which I like more. I do really like Zoom because of that intimacy and because also with the main readers, we share the poems on the screen, so you get a bit more. You can read them at the same time, which is quite nice. But it's more stressful on Zoom in some ways because of the whole security and Zoom bombing and all that
Oh,
stuff. We
yeah.
have been Zoom bombed a couple of times.
I've got a
Yeah,
feeling I was at one of your nights when that happened, actually, Thomas. Yeah, and it wasn't the
yeah,
worst example I've seen. I've seen some pretty. I'll tell you off mic
yeah.
later. The worst one I've seen at Amanda's. So Amanda did that, and it was shocking. But listen,
Oh, yeah.
that's not to talk about it. But yeah, I agree. So now, obviously, is there anything you want to mention about cafe writers coming up? Then, what guests you got coming up?
So, yes, on this Monday we've got
This
a man.
podcast will be out after, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah,
I can't remember who we've got in November. I'll look that up in the break.
yeah, that's
But
fine.
our poetry competition is open at the moment, and it's one of the cheaper poetry competitions now, and it's being judged this year by Jessica Mukherjee, and she
Ooh.
reads all the entries. We don't have any sifters, which is unusual. So the judge will, if you enter, the judge will actually get to read your poem.
No, you're right. There's a lot of sifting on it, and it's kind of more horrifying. Somebody here talks of free rounds where they do an AI sift first, and someone does a
Oh
sifting where the
no,
judge gets.
that
I've heard
that's
that all free.
terrible.
Yeah, but no, listen, that's not for this anyway. So, okay, what do you have coming up next for yourself then? I presume you've got another book in development at some stage or another.
Yeah, it's not at the stage where I'm thinking of it as a book yet. It's more I'm writing bits and pieces. So I am exploring childhood a bit through the lens of neurodiversity, but
Oh,
also I've been writing a bit about friendship and friends, and that's something I haven't really looked at before. So, but at the moment, I'm not entirely sure where that next collection's going to go.
no, I understand. Yeah, sometimes I think all books you do, sometimes you're at that stage where it takes time to let the book tell you which direction it's going to go.
Yeah, you
I'm
sort of
used,
you
I'm
write a lot of
usually,
things, don't you? And then you look at them and then you think, oh, this is interesting. And yeah, suddenly you're writing about something and it sort of takes you over kind of thing.
yeah, usually me is I used to have, well, several different folders on the go at the same time, and I'll
Yeah.
just jump in and out what wants to be wrote next properly, basically, and then the other one may follow, it may not. So, but I get complete with it. Now, obviously, we need to give the book a plug first. Now, where can people get hold of this fantastic book?
You can buy it from the publisher's website, which is Nine Arches Press, but it is available from any good bookshop. If they don't have it in store, you can order it. You can order it from the horrible website that begins with an A, and I'm not going to plug them.
No, no.
But any other, I think the Poetry Book Society has it, and probably Verve has it as well. Yeah.
Good,
Or you
good.
can, if you follow me on social media, you can drop me a direct message, and I can do you a signed copy.
Perfect. So it always sounded winning to me, that one. Definitely called Charlie Sheen. So, where can people find you on social media then? Last question.
So I'm on Twitter, I mean X, as it's now called. I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm a bit on Facebook, but I tend not to friend so many people I don't know on Facebook.
Yeah, no, you get
And
that
I'm on
stage like
Instagram.
Facebook.
I'm on
Yeah,
Instagram, but I'm not massively active on Instagram.
same for me. Is I've got very careful what I have on Facebook, to be honest. It may seem like I haven't, but I am. I'm very, very
Yeah,
cautious because there's so I've had some strange messages on that before now.
yeah.
Agreed. So, but listen, thank you again for today's part one, Julie. It's been an absolute pleasure today. I've thoroughly
Thank
enjoyed
you for
this.
having me.
Okay, folks, we are going to take a quick break because Julie's got to go and find some information out for me. And we shall be back in a couple of moments' time when she can read out a couple of pieces for us. Thank you again. See you all in two shakes of the, when I can find the off button, dice.